Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the final session of this year's Techstars Startup Week Dayton Food and Beverage Day. So thank you for spending your day with us, and we hope you've been able to soak up some useful knowledge as you move forward in your endeavors. So to close today, we're going to hear the story of Hot Head Burritos and Rapid Fired Pizza from the founder himself. Ray Wiley grew up on the West Coast and cut his teeth in the restaurant business during the early years of Pizza Hut when his father owned and then sold several stores. Supervision of 10 Skyline Chili stores in Columbus, Ohio brought Ray to Dayton in 1989 when he purchased his first Subway. In 2002, Ray owned 15 stores and was named Subway's Regional Franchisee of the Year. In 2007, Ray launched Hot Head Burritos, and in 2015, he launched the first Rapid Fired Pizza. Today, Ray and his partners own 14 of the 70-plus Hot Head stores and 11 of the 30-plus Rapid Fired Pizza stores. So in this keynote talk, he will reflect on how many attempts it takes to make a successful business, how to choose between franchising or building your own brand, and he'll share his top piece of advice to help you find success. Ray, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Take us away.
All right. Well, thanks for having me today. I sure appreciate the opportunity, and hope everybody's having a good day, and hopefully everybody's doing okay in the COVID situation. So anyways, just wanted to share my story today, and that hopefully can help some folks out there either be inspired to be an entrepreneur or be fearful of being an entrepreneur. But either way, I want to share my story and give you some thoughts on what you can do in business and the challenges and some of the victories, I guess we'll say it. So to give you a little bit of history, as you mentioned, I grew up in the Seattle area, Bellevue actually, and lived there through about high school, right at the end of high school. Ended up coming out to Ohio. Basically, my dad had done a deal with some Skyline franchisor, but just to go back a little bit to when I was younger. So, in business, or in any kind of career path, there's a lot of challenges you face. And I will tell you, I started off as a paper boy, and that was just such an eye-opening situation. Had a paper route that was about 380 papers, and if you've never been a paper boy or a paper girl, you may not understand how big a route that is, but that is a considerable amount of papers to put out in a morning. And one of the things about the paper business is back then, it's changed a lot in 30 or 40, I guess it's been probably 40 years. But back then, you delivered a paper every single day of the year. There was no days off. And I happened to be in the Seattle area at that time, and so it was a morning paper. Actually, it started as an afternoon paper, but changed to a morning paper. So basically, you had to get up every single day of the year, including Christmas morning. So that was a good experience for learning what it's like to be disciplined, to be kind of in a situation you can't just take a day off. You can't blow things off. You actually have to do it, or all your customers will call you looking for their paper, of which that did occasionally happen. But that was just a really great experience. And my dad did help me a fair amount on that, occasionally on Sundays, because Sunday papers are just massive. And to carry 380 of those, we generally had to take a small vehicle. We had a little Toyota station wagon. But so my dad and I spent a few days doing that in the morning, and had some rainy days on some of those mornings, and just overall a really good experience as a young person of really teaching me responsibility and things like that. Also back then is you had to go out and collect your monthly payments from all your customers in person. You had to go door to door every month and collect that, and then you had to turn around and pay your paper bill to the newspaper. So they sent you a bill, and if you didn't go out and collect enough from your customers, then you were short on your bill. And generally, if you're short on your bill, it just showed you didn't make any money. And you had to go to the bank of mom and dad if you were short to pay your paper bill. And so you learned a little bit about finance, you learned a little bit about discipline, and you learned a lot about tracking customers and accounts receivable. And I can tell you, I'm thinking like 12 or 14 years old when I did that. So again, a good early experience. Right after doing that, I went right into my first restaurant job, which was a dishwasher. I think I really got to the point at that point I wanted to work inside, not outside anymore. Didn't want to get up every single morning. And so again, I'm thinking about 14 back then, because you could get hired at 14. This is kind of before they really had minor labor laws, but thank God they didn't, because I made a fair amount of money doing that. But started at a restaurant called The Rice Paddy, washing dishes, a little rough. It was a kind of a upscale Chinese restaurant, so we had waiters and waitresses, and it was a white tablecloth with everybody wearing ties as far as the wait staff and busboys. But I did that for a little while. I immediately moved up to be a busboy, and then I became the head busboy, and so I was managing people at a very young age, and I don't even know how old I was then. I was probably 15, maybe 16, managing a staff of probably about 6 or 8 bus people and dishwashers. But again, it was just one of those more experiences I had that got my feet wet and started to figure out what management was and what restaurants were. And again, just another experience. I was very fortunate in that my father was a Pizza Hut guy. And what happened was when he graduated from college, he was going to, I think it was Wichita State. But anyways, the other founders of Pizza Hut, which is the Carney brothers, they were friends with my dad, and they had my dad work in their first Pizza Hut. My dad wasn't a founder, but he was very involved in the early parts of Pizza Hut. So he worked in the first Pizza Hut. He went on to become a franchisee in the Pizza Hut system. He also, I believe, I was so young at the time, so I don't have all the details memorized, but he basically would go around and help them find locations. He would help them develop stores in different cities. And as a child, we moved city to city because as my dad would go to one city, he'd open up Pizza Huts. We'd be there for a couple years. He'd get those open. Then he'd go to another city, open up Pizza Huts, and so forth and so on. So I basically got dragged city to city as a young person going through different, elementary schools at that point in time. But I think that was actually a good experience for me because, one, I got to see my parents working in their stores, and I got dragged out there, and I'm sure I spent a few nights sitting in a booth coloring a coloring book waiting for mom and dad to get done working, but it was a good experience. My older brother Chris and my older brother Peggy were involved as well, and my brother's a couple of years older than me, so he was more apt to actually be able to get in there. But I'll never forget, back then, we made pizza sauce in 5-gallon buckets, and I'll never forget them stirring up the sauce in those 5-gallon buckets. So anyways, my dad did that for years. He got out of that in about 1970 when Pizza Hut sold. He decided to sell his 18 Pizza Hut restaurants he acquired. Actually sold to my uncle. That's another story. But so I had a good experience in that. Again, just getting more involved in the pizza business. And that was when I was very young. So again, I didn't continue working for him at that point. But that got me at least understanding of the business. We then ended up in Seattle, as I mentioned before, where I kind of grew up. We were in Florida when my dad was doing development. We ended up in the Seattle area. That's where my mom's parents are when my dad sold his Pizza Hut. So we were up there. I went to school through, like I said, high school, and that's where I was working at the Rice Paddy. But basically, where am I at here? So from Seattle, my dad received an offer in Wichita from another company that had friends related to Pizza Hut, but we ended up moving back to Wichita, in which I got into pizza with Domino's Pizza, and a couple other regional brands and smaller brands around there. So I worked in a couple different of those brands, but ended up going to work for Domino's when they came to Wichita, which was, again, this is, 35 years ago. I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. Went to work for Domino's, and shortly after that, my dad had been approached by the company that owned Skyline Chili and said, hey, we'd like you to come out to Ohio and see if you can take Skyline Chili national. Skyline at that point in time, this was about 1989. They had, this is 84. Skyline had about 80 stores. They were looking to see if they could get this thing to go out past the Cincinnati area. And, Cincinnati Chili, Skyline, is very regional, and it's had a lot of challenges when it gets outside of the Cincinnati area. In fact, we went and built stores in Columbus. We built stores in Toledo. And actually, we did this in a pretty short span of time. In about 4 years, we built 10 stores. And basically what we figured out is that once you get out about 80 miles from Cincinnati, no one understands what Greek chili is or Cincinnati chili. They look at you Like, why would you ever put chili on spaghetti, and where's the beans and all this stuff? So in those restaurants we opened, I learned what failure looked like, because those restaurants failed. The ones in Toledo, a number of them in Columbus, and the ones in Dayton did okay. So that group of investors, along with my father, decided Skyline probably just wasn't going to make it on a national basis. I will tell you, they've had a random success down in Florida. In fact, one of the stores we built was in Tallahassee, Florida, which did not succeed. But the random success they had was down in, what's that city called? Where? No, I can't remember the name. But anyways, down in
Naples.
Naples, thank you. And Naples had been there for years, and they'd done it so well because of all of the snowbirds from the Cincinnati area would go down there and buy a condo or whatever, and so that store had continued for many years. But anyway, so we got to a point where we're going to get out of Skyline, and they were going to close some of those stores, and my dad decided to take another option as far as his career. But at that time, I pretty much lost my job because I was the supervisor for our 10 Skylines. And so that put me in a situation where I just wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had learned a lot. And at that point, Subway had just started to come on the map. They had quite a few stores by then, but in Ohio, they hadn't really come on. And we opened the second store in Dayton, I believe, or third store in Dayton. And it did okay. It kind of struggled, as new businesses do. But I had a partner named Matt Curtis, and we decided to go all in. And actually, at the time, we were living in Columbus when we bought the franchise for Dayton. So we had to move from Dayton and start the Subway. And I'll never forget, in business, you're going to have struggles. And I can tell you that our very first Subway did about $1,200 a week. I mean, literally, it was doing about $200 a day. And we didn't know how to pay the bills. We were afraid for our life. But somehow, in working, open to close every day, we got that store to work. And over time, it became a really good store. But from that first store out in Miamisburg, we went on to own 10 stores. Matt and I owned the 10 stores. We did that for about 10 years. And I can tell you that during that time frame, it was an early time for Subway. Subway was doing okay, and I mean just barely okay. Wasn't really all that profitable, but we kept our heads afloat, and at one point in time we just got to a point we said, we can't do this anymore. We're really not making any money, and we're going to get out. So that was I started in Subway in '89, and we got out of Subway in 1996. But part of my responsibility in the buyout when Subway bought our stores was that I had to work for them. So I went back in as a supervisor and managed the same stores that I just recently sold. So that was an experience, and did that for about a year. So now the funny thing is we kind of do what we know. And like I said, I got out of Subway in 1996, and a year later, I had a video store. Because at that point in time, I didn't really want to go back and work for somebody. I really wanted to stay as an entrepreneur. And so I opened a video store. And back then, in 96, video stores were very popular, and Blockbuster and all of them were doing really good. So I opened this video store in a little town called New Carlisle, Ohio, and it did okay. Not too bad. It supported the family. And next door, there was a Subway, and a friend of mine owned that Subway, and it was his lowest volume store. We refer to those as a dog, but it just was too far away from where he lived and wasn't managing it well. So he said, Ray, you want to buy this store from me? And I thought, heck no, I'll never get back in the Subway. I never made any money doing that. So thought about it for about one day, turned back around and said, all right, Jeff, I'll buy it. So, sometimes you do what you know, and sometimes you have to come back and to the things that you know. So anyways, it was a very, very lucky decision at that point in time. Like I said, it was right next door to our video store, so it was very easy to manage. But so took it over. It was not doing very much business. But what's amazing is Jared came on the scene about 4 months after I bought it. And if you remember Jared, the guy that lost like 600 pounds eating Subway sandwiches. So Jared came on the scene, and the entire Subway system changed. Within probably about 6 months, my store sales doubled, and Subway was now on the road. Subway, there's a lot of companies out there that they, as a lot of companies out there, they finally reach critical mass, or a certain event takes place in which propels them to the next level, and that truly was Jared for the Subway system. So Subway sales almost nationwide went up significantly, maybe as much as doubling. Surely mine did. And then instantly, we had a really good business. I continued building stores about as fast as I could, built up 15, 16 stores, and I was buying stores, selling stores, building stores, whatever. But so basically, I continued to do that, and Subway was very good to me for a number of years. So that basically, I bought back in 2000. I think I sold my last store in 2016. But along the lines, somewhere along the line there, I started looking for more. I wanted to do more, and Subway, like I said, had been good to me. But the Subway area in Dayton was pretty well filled up, and you really couldn't put any more stores in. So one day, I go out to dinner with one of our neighbors, and he says, "You ever been to Chipotle?" And I'm like, "No." So he says, "Let's go to Chipotle for dinner." So we ended up going to Chipotle. And if you're in the Dayton market, this was up in north end of Dayton. But anyways, we go into this Chipotle, and man, they had a line of customers out the door, and they must have been doing $10,000 a day. It was just phenomenal. And I thought, well, this is absolutely crazy. I mean, they got a grill, they got a cold table, they got a hot table, and these guys are rocking and rolling. This is nothing too complicated. So pretty much within a couple of days, oh no, I'm sorry. Actually, what happened next was I was at a neighborhood party, and I happened to be sitting next to one of the people who manages the distribution center in Springfield, Ohio, where Chipotle does distribution. And he proceeded to pretty much tell me all about Chipotle and how well they were doing and things like that. So I thought, well, I'm going to go buy a Chipotle franchise. And so I called Chipotle, and they said they don't franchise. They're all corporate. I said, okay. So I called Moe's, called Qdoba, and see what their franchise is all about. And basically, I just came to the conclusion when I called Moe's and Qdoba, I thought, how are you charging so much for a store? And I thought, man, I could build a store for half that. So I did. We built our first store, 2007, over in Kettering, Ohio, and popped that store open, and it did pretty good. So we went on to build stores. So that was 2007. In 2008, we had, I think, 2 or 3 stores open. Then we just started opening stores. By 2010, we started franchising. And by 2012, which is 2 years later, we had 55 stores. So it grew crazy over about a 2-month period. So we had a good run, and we started having a good run in Hot Head. But it was quite an experience, building a brand and coming up with all the details of, what kind of cup, or what kind of fork, or what kind of bowl you're going to use, and who's going to sell you this, and where you're going to buy that. And it became very, very much an undertaking, which we learned from. So, I would just say when you talk about business and restaurants and franchises and things like that, I can tell you, I don't want to run out of time here, but I could tell you just incredibly long stories about all of the things that the decisions you make when you do your own business. Now, I also started a lawn care company in 2000, whatever that was, 2019. I'm sorry, 1999. So I learned about the lawn care business, all that, the goods and bads and uglies, restaurant business, so forth, so on. But in any business, if you're going to go in and start a business and you've never been in that line of business, I would not do it. Or I would just say, if you're going to, you better do a ton of research. If you're already in the restaurant business and you want to start a restaurant, that in itself is going to be a challenge. And like I mentioned before, you got to pick out every fork and spoon and bowl and tablecloth, or, what's the carpet going to be, and what's the, just a zillion things, right? Or you can franchise. Now, obviously, we sell franchises, and, so I'm probably pro franchise. But I will say this. If you don't have a ton of experience and you try to do it, your rate of failure is going to be increased greatly. But if you go with a franchise, your success is going to be increased because you already got a system that functions, that already works. And all you have to do is go in and operate that system. So whether it's one of our franchises or a franchise of another brand, I would just say for your first round in business, I would recommend you do a franchise because that way you have a roadmap. You have a way to know what to do, when to do it. Someone's already done it. They already have success. They already have the marketing. I mean, I just can't explain to you the enormous amount of hours that go into creating a brand. I mean, we've actually started a new concept in development. And it just reminded me, and we're not disclosing that right now, but my point is it just started to remind me, oh my gosh, I mean, the decisions, there's hundreds and hundreds, and you sit in a room with 8 people and you just beat each other to death with questions. And, here's why this won't work and will work. And why are we using that color? And why aren't we using this color? And, it's amazing. So my point is, if you're going to go into business, I highly recommend that you do it using a franchise system in the beginning. So a couple more of my notes here and think of things that I think might be really important to you. I can tell you some of my personal goals have always been to grow a national brand. I think it's just fantastic when through a franchise system like ours, when we help a franchisee grow. And obviously, when we're trying to grow a national brand, we're going to have a lot of franchisees. But it's a really great feeling when you have a franchisee come into you that has, maybe they have a little bit of money, maybe they don't. But when they succeed and they say, "Oh my gosh, you have changed my lifestyle. You have changed who I am. You changed how I live." I was out with a franchisee the other day on a pretty big boat that they own now, and they contributed to it. Or they said the reason they own that boat is because of Hot Head Burritos and because they got in our franchise. And so that's a really neat thing for us to be able to offer that to people. And it's a really neat thing to see that when it happens. So there's a lot of reasons we do what we do. But again, my goals was to grow a brand in national status, not just any brand, but a good brand, a brand that we're proud of. And as I mentioned, help people achieve success. And I can tell you just, in the day-to-day operations, it's nice. We have what, 23 corporate stores. We have probably 350 employees. And we have 20 staff that are above the stores, senior people, supervisors, so forth, so on. And, there's a few people out there we pay pretty good. And it's nice to be able to provide some really great jobs like that for people. So we're proud of that, and we're happy with that, and we always want to grow our business so we can continue to pay those folks well and provide some new jobs. So there's just a lot of things we do. I'd love to do some philanthropy down the road. I like speaking like this, where I can talk to people who are maybe considering going into business, and I'm even, I'm open to people want to shoot me an email, and ask me some questions. I'm happy to help. I don't always have the time to respond because sometimes I'm pretty busy, but I will say that my goal is to definitely help. So, just to mention a couple takeaways from all this, I just wanted to really mention, I'm going to look at my list here just for a second. It can take a few attempts to become successful in business. For instance, Paperboy was my first attempt at business. I think I succeeded at that. Bowtie Window Cleaning was the lawn care company I had. And I'd say we succeeded at that. I just will say that when I got in the landscaping business and learned about it, I kind of decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Because the problem is none of your employees are around you. They're out running around with trucks and mowers, and it's a different world. So just if you get into that one, just be prepared. Skyline was a family-owned company that grew to a regional brand. It was interesting to watch that work. In my first round of Subways, my first 10 stores with Matt failed. We ran out of money, so that was a failure. Like I said, I was in the video store business. One big failure we had was we wanted to do a quick serve sushi chain. And so we did our first location. And I can tell you, we were pretty proud of the concept. I think we did a really nice job. But I think we had the wrong location. And we're smart people. We've been around for a while. We know how to do marketing. And I can tell you this, that restaurant failed with a lot of smart people behind it. And what you should be aware of is that the restaurant was only about 300,000 to open, but somehow we managed to lose about 550,000. So when you go into business, the amount of money you put up to get open does not mean that's how much you're going to lose if it doesn't work. It can be considerably more. So keep that in mind. But thankfully, I had multiple business partners, so we could spread out that loss. I didn't have to pay for all of it. I had a few other great people involved, and they helped me share that. In fact, we're just glad that's done now. Rapid fire pizza, we've done good with that. Obviously, any brand has challenges. One of the things we're into now is we're even tinkering around with cryptocurrency. We actually own a mine. We're mining some Ethereum right now, and that market's done really well lately. But again, we'd like to stay a little bit diversified in what we do. It allows us to be in touch with the world and see what's going on. So, see a couple more takeaways here. I talked about buying a franchise. Sometimes they say, if you don't want to be a franchisee, here's one Kelly brought up. The Flynn Group is a group that owns multiple franchises. They own Applebee's and Arby's and Taco Bell's. They have 1,085 restaurants, and they're a franchisee of these brands. They did $2.3 billion in sales last year. So even if your goal is to build this huge, massive corporation, you can do it through franchising, and you can do it through multiple brands. So keep that in mind. Just reading down my list here a minute. Saving pennies, one of the things you learn, and it gets ingrained in your mind, whenever you run a business that was struggling, like my early days in Subway, you learn that every penny is important. In fact, one of the things that I remember is when you open a new store in a small town, and this is back in the Subway days, a new store in a small town, you could first open up big sales, and you're doing big money, and that can go on for 90 days or 6 months. Depends on really how long you manage it well, but eventually it's going to come down a fair amount, just because everybody came there to eat because you're new, and so you got a bunch of customers coming through. But one of the things I used to always see, and we kind of laughed, is when a new franchisee would come in, they'd open in a small town, their sales would go through the roof, and they'd go out and buy a Cadillac. And you're like, man, don't buy that Cadillac yet. Wait till you see where your sales are in 6 months. So what I'm trying to get across there is that don't part with $1, until you really, really have some money under your belt and you've got some time with your business and you understand it. I remember a guy told me one time, he said, son, if I give you $1, what are you going to do with that $1? And I said, well, what does it matter? It's just $1. He said, yeah, but it's the one time that you will get that $1. That's the only time you get it, one time. You need to make a decision on what you're going to do with that $1. Now, I will say, a lot of people will say, I want to be a millionaire. I want to make $1 million. Well, there's a secret, is you don't become a millionaire by making $1 million. You become a millionaire by saving $1 million. Keep that in mind, that it's very important how you make your money. And I will tell you, most of the people I know that are millionaires, you wouldn't know it if you ran into them. They save their money. They don't waste it. It's very important to always have a lot of cash, because you never know what you're going to get into, never know if you run into a problem. So if you do get to a point where you're making good money, don't spend all your money. Have a significant savings account, because again, you may need it, or you might see a good opportunity that comes up, and you have that cash available to take advantage of that. Now, let's see what else we got in here. Oh, education. You gotta. I'm not a big book reader, but I love audiobooks. I listen to them a ton. I did for many years. I learned about those when I was in Amway. I was in Amway when I was 17 years old. Did pretty good there for a while. But those audiobooks, they say that, and when you get into self-development books, is that if you don't change how you think today, then you won't be able to change your world. In other words, if you want to be a millionaire, you can't think like you do today unless you're already a millionaire. If you want to be a millionaire, you got to think like a millionaire. If you want to be successful, you have to think successful. So you can't just come up with those ideas. You're going to learn them from someone or someone's experience, or from a book or a tape you listen to. So don't have tapes anymore, CDs. But so again, The only way you're going to get where you want to go is by gathering information. I tell you, I'm in the restaurant business. I read the trade magazines. I like to know what's going on in the industry. I need to know what's going on in the industry so I know what customers are looking for. And it keeps me in tune so I know what's coming down the road, or what's the newest thing, or what's the newest flavor, or what's a problem, that's coming down the road we're looking at. And so again, you have to be in touch with society, in touch with your business, and in touch with learning. So please keep that in mind. I've had a number of role models. I've had a couple of them that sometimes made me uncomfortable and pushed me. And actually, I do like that. Sometimes I think if people don't realize that if you're leading an organization, or if you're an entrepreneur, for those of you who have a job and you have a boss, it's easy to get motivated when your boss tells you to do something because you don't want to lose your job. But when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have anybody telling you what to do. And sometimes it's a lot easier to have somebody tell you what to do. So as an entrepreneur, just remember, you're going to need a lot of self-motivation. And if you want to be successful in business, you cannot put things off for tomorrow. You need to do as much as you can today, because blowing things off or kicking the can down the street, that's the worst thing you can do as an entrepreneur. You have to accomplish tasks. You have to get things done. And stay organized, and use a list. If you don't work from a list, you're going to really struggle being successful. I will say that I believe in God, and I believe God opens doors, and I believe in a higher power. And that higher power can be in a lot of different ways. It's not necessarily through a specific religion, but it is, if nothing else, I've always said God is good, and God is the power of good. And if all there is just the power of good, then that's okay, because that's really what we want, right? We want things to be good. We want to be able to help people. We want help to come to us. And I think a lot of people believe that the more faith you have in good or God, it really becomes faith in yourself. And you're going to need that if you get into business. So be open-minded. You got to take your blinders off. Don't ignore things. Don't be ostrich management, where you stick your head in the sand and you ignore things, because I assure you, they will come back around. Success doesn't happen in 40 hours a week. If you want to work 40 hours a week, good luck. It's usually more like 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week. Right now I'm probably not working, more than 45 or 50, but I can tell you, I've been doing this, 35 years, and I probably worked, even in the last 12 months, I'm sure I've worked some 60s and 70s occasionally. Advertise till it hurts. You've got to advertise. Just think about this. The opposite of advertising is like keeping something a secret. So keep that in mind. You got to tell people what you got. When you're taking controlled risk, only risk which you can afford to lose. If you take risk beyond what you can afford to lose, if you do lose, you do not have the resources to try again. So always hold something back as far as resources, so you have a second swing at it. Always have a plan. Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, because you're probably going to not end up on plan A. You're probably going to end up operating on plan D. If dealt lemons, we say make lemonade. So keep that in mind. That's something that has gotten us through some struggles, and it'll help your attitude when you're having some bad days and situations aren't going right. But pretty much that's what I got today to say, and I welcome any questions anybody might have, and hopefully my story can help you in some way.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Yep, we do have a few questions that came in. What's the secret, as much as you can share, to staying unique and different from your competitors?
Wow. There's just a lot of, there's so many options when you're in a business. In Hot Head, we came out of the gate and said, how do we compete against Chipotle? And we said, well, we're going to bring 12 different sauces in, so that a customer can have a range of flavors, everything from mild to wild to super hot. So, I'm always looking for that. We call it a unique selling point, and it can be anything from the way you market or a product you sell. And you just got to keep your eyes open and keep thinking. And look what's going on around you in other businesses. And no new idea is a new idea.
What would you say is the best formula to scale your business?
Well, I'm in the multi-unit business, like we build, store after store after store, restaurant after restaurant. But if you're in a different business, like, real estate person or something like that, then scaling your business is a lot different. But for us, we're just about getting more stores open. That'll be our scaling.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of questions about COVID. How have the restaurants been affected? How have you pivoted? What were your sales like? How do you project sales through the end of the year?
Well, overall, the industry has been just devastated by it, especially sit-down dining. I don't even know how some of these brands are still operating. I think we're going to lose a lot of those sit-down brands. As far as for our businesses, we're lucky, we're fortunate, we're in a good situation. Whereas we did a tremendous amount of carry-out business already. So on the Hot Head side, we've maintained pretty much all of our sales, just because we had so much carry-out that little bit shifted to carry-out, and we still have some dine-in. So that's done really well for us. Rapid Fire has been affected a little bit more by the dine-in business, but again, we're fortunate in both those concepts. I mean, I can tell you a ton of other things about it. Just, everybody wearing the mask, and the employees struggle with that, and the customers, and we had to put up sneeze guards to make it so the customers, employees felt safer. And geez, I mean, we did so many things that, we did curbside carry out, so the customer doesn't even have to come in. I mean, there's just been 1,000 things we had to do.
Were you impacted by any supply chain issues?
Initially, yes. The first few weeks of it, everything was impacted because no one wanted to go to work. Suppliers didn't have employees. It was just really awkward to get anything done. Great.
I'm glad to hear that you've done well.
Yeah, we've done okay. Yeah. Now, one thing I will say, we also, have had a lot of the third-party delivery, which is good. But the problem is the third-party platforms charge, up to 30% of your ticket. So we've had to pass some of that cost on to the customer, and we've had to absorb some of that cost ourselves. So that is a double-edged sword on that one.
Good to note. Those are the questions that have came in. Other comments, a lot of them say thank you for sharing your story. They really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would say if anybody's trying to go into business, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll try to cut out a few minutes to talk to them or something.
Yep. Got a couple questions, or a couple folks that are going to take you up on that.
Oh, one other quick point, if I could throw in here. Yeah, just a minute. So one thing you do have to do is you have to get a good team of people. The team you have is more important than the concept you're doing. Because if you have a good team, you can pretty much do anything. But if you have a good concept and a bad team, you're going to struggle. Yeah, and you got to have accountants and attorneys and lots of help.
How did you choose your team?
I think they chose me. No, I've had a lot of our team, our main team, for many, many years. They started with me in Subway as long as 20 years ago, and some of them have been here less time, but they generally move up through the ranks. They might come in as a regular employee, and just little by little they climb the ladder and become a supervisor or something like that.
Great. I've had another question. What do you like most about the fast casual industry?
Oh, well, I mean, the nice thing about the fast casual industry is it is nimble. It can change. It can modify its menus pretty easily. And I guess that's probably my biggest thing. And as a business person, it's way less expensive to get into a fast casual than it is to get into a full serve restaurant. One quick thing back to the team. One thing I will say is that, you do have to pay your team well, and those people are important. And like they say, if you take care of your team, they'll generally take care of you.
That's been a theme throughout today.
Yeah, good. I will say it's amazingly hard to get employees right now when unemployment's 14%. That one I don't quite understand. So,
I have to say, I did enjoy the sushi place Wiley was open, so I was one of your customers.
I thought it was a great product, you know?
Yep.
We just think it wasn't close enough to, I think for that product, you just need to be around military because the military travel the world, they eat more sushi, or college kids because they're just, you know, more into that type of things, or I just don't think we had the right location.
You know, you win some and you lose some. Like you said, you know, you were in Subway and you got out, but you went back in. And
yeah. Well, any other questions or anything for me today?
Nothing else has come in.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just popping on. Thank you so much, Ray, for sharing your story and sharing your knowledge with the community today. And I will definitely follow up with you to connect you with some of the attendees who are interested in picking your brain a little since you offered. Thank you for that. Your support of Startup Week and of our startup community means a great deal. For everyone else, yeah, this wraps up our food and beverage day at Techstars Startup Week Dayton 2020. Thank you, Mandy, for being our master coordinator for the day, our volunteer track captain for coordinating and recruiting these awesome speakers like Ray. We've got one more day left for this year's Startup Week. Tomorrow is our defense entrepreneurship track. So if you're interested in learning how to work with the Air Force Base, Air Force Research Lab, any of those entities that are obviously big industry in our region, then tomorrow is the day for you. We'll be kicking off at 10 a.m. With Brigadier General Heather Pringle talking about the Air Force's R&D priorities moving into 2021 and 2022. So, and a final shout out, of course, to our amazing sponsors. Fifth Third Bank, Wright State Applied Research Corporation, and the Entrepreneur Center are our title sponsors this year, and we would not be able to make this week happen without them. So please throw them a little love, and thank you for spending another day with us. Everybody have a good evening.